Okay, we're going to talk about how the signing in and the ballot audit all works. The first thing that when an individual comes in to vote, they're using what's called No Week, or it's where you come in and you sign in on an actual poll pad, and this takes your signature and all your information. And this is a system on its own that captures all that information. After the end of the day in early voting, or if it's after the actual election day, all this information is imported into their system. We call it our e-pulse, and in e-pulse it will print out a list of all the individuals that voted for that day, gives date, time stamp on that, and so we have a pretty good idea of when they vote. So once that is put into e-pulse, it's actually imported into the state website's system, which is called Elvis. And so that's how we go and look and see how many votes were cast. Now, if for some reason this system does not work, we have a backup, and it's called a manual poll book. And so this manual poll book, a person would have to come in and sign, and then we have to manually put this information into Elvis, which is the state website. On the November 2025 election, the very first day of open early voting, we actually had a problem with our poll pads, and so 29 voters had to just sign the poll book. Those 29 voters had to be manually counted later on and get credit. So we had to manually go into Elvis, isn't that correct? And put that information into Elvis so that they got voter credit. And so that's that process. In the event that someone shows up at the wrong polling place, they would have to sign what's called a provisional poll book. And this provisional poll book requires them also to fill out provisional paperwork. These are also a manual count, but it's done during what we call the canvass. And so that is done later on, several weeks after the election. We also do what's called mail-in advance ballots. And mail-in advance ballots are looked at every single day. We go out to our mailbox, and we have what's called a chain of custody sheet. And so Amber and I go out, we look at how many ballots we have, we validate it, we say it's advance, and then we both sign off on it. So this is our audit log that tells us each day who's coming in and voting. We don't put their names down, but we know that we have 2 advance ballots. But advance ballots, we know who we've mailed them to, and we know who has returned them to us. If there's any problems with them, like somebody has signed the wrong envelope, like husband, wife may have signed for their envelope, then we send it back to them and we make them fix it because we can't accept it. And then any that might be returned to us for bad addresses. So that's another thing that's a very manual process and also goes through the canvass. Provisionals, again, we kind of talked about that. On election day, each place sends us back their provisionals, and we get a count of what their provisionals are going to be. And all of this is tracked on a worksheet that we have, so we know what our advance ballots are, our UACAVAs, which are people that are in the military, and we usually have 2 of those every year. And then we have our provisionals, and then we have our poll books that are manually signed. So we always know how many people have voted based on this system. So the third thing, we have 2 systems. We have our poll books, we have Elvis, and then we also have Clear Ballot. Clear Ballot is the system that you use, that you put your actual ballots through the machine, and it spits out at the end of the day a big long report that tells us how many ballots went through that machine. There can be instances where somebody did a provisional and the supervising judge may have missed getting that provisional back. They tore their ballot off and put it in the machine. all of that is notated at the end of the day. So if our ballot counts don't match what our poll book says, then we know what the problem is. Those are pretty easy to identify. And so you also have a report out of that system so that we know how many ballots were cast versus how many signatures we took. And so therefore that is kind of our audit process that tells us how we come up to the total number of ballots cast. At the canvassing, that is where we have a board of canvassers, which is generally your county commissioners. They are the first ones, but they can allocate somebody else to come in and do their canvassing for them if they want to. And that's happened on many occasions. But we go through every single provisional and they look and see whether or not the provisional counts as a vote. And again, that's a very manual process. There are certain standards that they have to go by on provisionals. We give this to them at the canvass so that they know ahead of time. Amber goes through and says, this is probably the statute that this will count or won't count, to kind of help them speed up the process and validate what she's looked at. And then all of this information is then put into Elvis. And so, it's, again, a very manual process. Anything you want to add to that, Amber?
Not that I can think of. Thank you. Pretty much hit on all the points.
So really we have three different systems that we tie out numbers. We have the poll pad system that gives us numbers. If we have any kind of manual stuff, we have Elvis, and then we also have Clear Ballot. And so we expect all those numbers to tie out, and if they don't, we go searching for why. I think that's pretty much the audit process. Do you have any questions for us, Mark, that might help validate anything? Help someone understand differently?
If the numbers don't match, you start digging through the other systems.
Yes.
Is there ever room for something being off by something or numbers matching when they don't? What does that look like, and how's that?
It's generally, if the numbers are off, it's generally going to be in your advanced ballots or your provisionals.
Okay.
Because that's the most room for human error. Last year we had 36 provisionals. 12 of them didn't count. And then we had 13 advanced ballots. So, but we make sure, and these counts go on until we do the canvass. Because in the past, this is another good point, we could collect ballots 3 days after Election Day. Well, there's a new law that changed, so everybody's ballots have to be in by 7 p.m. on Election Day now. We don't get to take them afterwards. So that's probably a good important point to get across to people, that they have to have their ballots in on Election Day. It is in litigation, but we are being told by the Secretary of State to plan on having all of our totals to the state on Election Day night.
So if somebody if they go into the website, the state website, and type in their name and birthday, that's pulling from the Elvis system,
Yes,
right?
that is
Okay.
correct. And we've had a couple come in and say, I voted, I don't have voter credit. And so what we do is we go into the Elvis system and we look and see how their name's put in. I had one individual come in, and whoever had put him in the system years ago did not put his name in correctly. So they put he did not have a middle name, but they put it in as a middle name. So therefore it wasn't pulling the information up on the state website. So that's something that we corrected. And it could be that simple. It could be somebody it's just how it's put in the system is very important to see whether or not, and so I would encourage people that if they're questioning whether information is not pulling up, call us. We'll say, hey, this is how your name is in our system, and that should help them overcome that.
Cool.
I think that's pretty much it on our audit. Everything we do has an audit process to it. So when we send all of our information to the polling places, everything is sealed. And when I say sealed, they have an actual seal on them with a number, and the supervising judges have to keep those seals and return them to us. And so if they have to break a seal, they have to put a new one on. And so all those seals are also audited, and we keep track of that based on what machine they're going on, just to make sure that nobody has tampered with anything. The other exciting thing for us is we have a lot of elderly people that volunteer for us, and it's very hard for them to get all of the ballots and stuff to the polling places the night before an election night. So I applied for a grant with the state, and we got an $8,500 grant for security. And so we are going to buy carts that will maintain all the ballots so that they will not have to take those anymore. We will take them for them, and they will be there sealed up and ready for them on election day. We also have to manually count every single ballot before we send it to the polling place.
And then they count them again the morning of.
Yeah, and they recount our count the morning of, and we validate. And then when they return them to us, they recount all the unvoted ballots. So that's kind of an audit trail. But with this election grant, we'll be able to buy 5 carts and also increase our security for cameras. That was one thing that I have had a camera missing on my election room, and so that will solve that problem. And so that was exciting news. We just got that last week. The last thing I want to talk about is how ballots are built. And Amber is the pro on ballots, and so most people don't understand the process